So I very often actually like to criticize a lot of things that developers are actually doing with their game, as you guys have seen in a lot of my videos before. And previously I also made my own reaction based on a video which was made by B-Force, where he talked about 5 naval upgrades which War Tycoon needs, and it seems that you guys actually really enjoyed me making this video, so today we're going to be reacting to once again another one. And this War Tycoon video was made by Newt, and it is going to be titled by Everything Wrong with War Tycoon, where this video basically covers all of the issues which War Tycoon currently has. This is a very underrated YouTuber and he's almost at 1,000 subscribers, so come on, let's get him to 1,000 by the time this video is gonna be posted. So anyway, today I'm going to be reacting to Everything Wrong with War Tycoon. So this video is going to be exactly 15 minutes long, but I'm gonna try to make some cuts in between to get the main points out. So of course the intro is gonna be pretty simple. I'm gonna just jump to the first point, which was actually covered in this video, and this point is going to be around the 36-second mark. So this is going to be Chapter 1, Power Creep and Power Scale.
As the War Tycoon is evolving, devs are adding new vehicles and features, and to make these new vehicles viable, they come with something like stronger armament, new features, or just stronger stats.
Exactly, and we have seen this before with stuff like the anti-ship missiles, stuff like the Seahawk, which had the, I guess, AI missiles, I guess we could name those, and there are a lot of other variety of stuff they have recently been adding to a lot of different vehicles.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly.
As a developer who puts effort into these new vehicles, you don't want to see these creations being forgotten the second that the hype of the update ends. So this leaves you no choice but to make the new vehicle better or more unique than the last one.
Yeah, this is just a cycle that continues.
Game evolution,
yeah,
also known as power scale. But the problem comes when this cycle reaches such a point where the new vehicles are overpowered compared to the old ones. And this is called power creep.
And it basically really just leaves a lot of vehicles useless in the meta. Like a perfect example of that were the starter propeller planes, which are really now, they don't really have a use, and you have to get something that's at least going to be from tier 2 if you want to at least be able to compete. A perfect example of that will be planes like the F-18, where you cannot really use something like the F-14 or the MiG-29 anymore.
Power creep is a very toxic state for the game and for the player base. Players who will use these underpowered vehicles will try to make them work, but most of the time, they will be killed by the stronger vehicles, and then they will be mad because they didn't get outplayed. But power creep.
Exactly, and another example of that is something like the F-22 Raptor and the Su-57. You're simply going to get outturned, you're simply just going to have worse weaponry than these other vehicles which I just talked about.
After some time, these players will give up on these vehicles and move on to some more viable ones. Thanks to this, the game will have a lot of content. But what's the point when part of it is unusable or very hard to have a good time in?
Well, the thing is with this is that they have recently added a brand new feature which basically adds different tiers to operations, allowing the new players to actually go ahead and get the easier stuff first, which I guess is weaker, and as time goes on, you're basically gonna want to rank up and get the better stuff. However, once again, this is still the same problem. Even if you do have the tier 2 vehicles or you have the tier 1 vehicles, stuff that's just going to be much higher in the meta is just gonna end up being used much more, and the other vehicles are not really used as much. The only way you could really make them usable, it's probably just going to be making these vehicles unique more than anything else. A perfect example of that will be something like the Nighthawk, which it does have its unique use, therefore it still remains somewhat decent in the meta. Same with the A-10. Even though it does get outclassed in other categories, it's still good in some, which is the kind of vehicles that we actually need.
You got the point, and now I will show you some examples. Here we have comparison between the Eurocopter and the hated Mangusta.
No one likes this vehicle.
At first view, we can clearly see that the Mangusta is stronger, stat-wise, than the Eurocopter. What about the armament? The Eurocopter has fixed bullet machine guns, and the Mangusta has 360 degrees explosive turret.
And these machine guns are not very good in the Eurocopter. They are a fixed gun, however, on average, you're gonna find yourself the explosive machine gun is just gonna be a lot better to use for most players as well. And the damage will overall be a lot better. Like, these are better against planes, where these are just good against both tanks and air vehicles at the same time. So this is just superior in every single way right now.
I don't know how you see it, but I would say that the Eurocopter's machine guns are very weak on their own.
They are.
But when you compare them to the Mangustas, it's a huge power gap. And now the missiles. Eurocopter has 8 multi-role missiles, while Mangusta has 8 fire forgets. Yes, I know that the fire forgets are very annoying, but that's not the point. Someone could ask, hey, both of them got 8 missiles with different missile type, but it can't be that big of a difference, right?
Oh, it's a big difference.
I wish it would be like this, but no, it is not. Eurocopter does 60 damage, which is insanely weak, compared to Mangusta, which can almost kill MBTS with just its missiles.
Exactly, and 8 of these missiles is enough to destroy every single tank and every single plane in the game, maybe except for something like the Mouse and the F-35. So what is even the point of using the Eurocopter here? I guess they gave it its radar recently, but that feature is so useless, it doesn't actually help you in any way as well.
It is even worse with the lock-on. Here's what I mean. The Eurocopter, as many other helicopters, has lock-on range of only 1,000 studs.
Yeah.
And this is what I don't get. And the man-held Stinger has lock-on range of 2,000
so unrealistic.
studs. That's double of what most helicopters like the Eurocopter have, which just makes no sense at all.
Yeah.
And now the Mangusta. Yes, the Mangusta does not lock on itself, but the missiles can travel and lock on at very far ranges.
Yes, and the worst part about this is just like he said right here, it has around 1,800 studs range, and the issue with a lot of our helicopters which we have in the game right now is the only heli that has over 1,000 range is the Mi-24 Hind, and it's pretty much a helicopter you have to grind until level 45 to get. And the other helicopters, like the, I guess, Viper we have the Apache, the Eurocopter, and all the other helicopters, they have a 1,000 stud lock-on range, and they're literally just left behind. In order to get a higher lock-on range than that for helicopters, you either have to grind so much for the Mangusta or the Mi-24, or you simply are forced to go pay to win. And this is where another issue is going right here.
At around 1,800 studs. And now, you see the balance problem.
Yeah.
The Eurocopter is from times where the whole map was smaller, then 3,000 studs, and the Mangusta is the new age helicopter. And now let's answer the question, what to do with vehicles like Eurocopter, which got lost in time? Well, it's kinda easy. Rework them, like they did with Apache and Humvee. It doesn't have to be a remodel or things like that. Just simple number changes in stats could do the work, but that depends up to the dev team.
Honestly, I don't understand why the developers wouldn't go with this. I mean, they have already made some good changes to a lot of vehicles before, like the AC-130 got heavily power-crept, but it's pretty decent now after the recent buff which it has received. I have seen so many more people use this, but also the simple way in which they could fix these helicopters is just give them a lock-on range of 1,400 studs and overall just buff the weaponry. It's just the statistics that are the problem here. These vehicles just feel so left behind.
And now the next chapter.
Yep. Limiteds and variants, and this is where it gets interesting. I talked about this before.
Personally, I like the idea of variants a lot, but I think it is kind of poorly executed, because most of the variants are limited, which means that you can get them in some time window, and after that, you might never get a chance to get them again, which leaves new players with the crepey Cold War T-72, when older players have the powerful T-72 Moderna. And that's why not a small amount of people are saying that War Tycoon is heading down the military tycoon's path.
That is kinda a 50-50, honestly. There are a lot of things which Military Tycoon has just done so much worse, and War Tycoon will never go down that path. I mean, with the limiteds, the way we have it right now, there are a few limiteds which I would complain about, but the most simple way, like I said before, to actually fix them is not to make every single variant limited time, so players could actually get better and different, more unique variants for free rather than having to wait for them to come back, or literally being forced to trade and grind so much to get these medals as a starter player.
Path that I do not want to see War Tycoon end up at.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
My idea is that they could keep making limited variants, but they should also add way more variants like with the Weasel 1 series.
Yeah, those were really good.
Where they would keep the vehicle, but they would add new weapon combinations, which would be in task operations, like Weasels. Or if the variant would have more weapons than the basic variant, it could be slower than the basic variant. I don't think we need variants from the T-90 tank to TOS-1 missile
That's
launcher.
just so much work.
Just basic weapon recombination, and maybe some stat adjustments could do the work just fine, and
Or just give us different weapon types which we could just attach to the vehicles instead, add a feature for that.
it would be less work for the devs as well.
Bro, these were done amazing.
This would be a great change because players could choose the armament that they like more while keeping their favorite vehicle. And don't forget that this would add more flexibility to every vehicle. So I hope War Tycoon will do something like this sometime.
Missing content. Oh, this is a very important one.
There are a few things that I want to mention, first being, when was the last time we got new armored vehicle task? I don't know how you, but I am tired of having to play tanks to have a good time at ground. There is so many vehicles they could add, and I will show you a few that caught my eye. First being the M1128 Wolfpack. This armored vehicle is armed with one 05mm cannon and few machine guns. I think War Tycoon needs armored vehicle with big cannon.
Yeah.
Of course, the cannon would not be as powerful as the KF-51s, but it could do same damage as Abrams or little less.
Yeah, that would work
be
perfectly.
Great addition to the armored vehicles, and also great way to counter tanks.
It would also make the ground vehicles unique as a whole, because having a ground vehicle which doesn't take parts that has a cannon, the idea of the cannon is very important, because there is just so much potential that the cannon as a whole actually has in this game. Like, they have the ability to one-shot planes and helicopters, so if you're skilled enough and you want to, I guess, have this vehicle as a spammable, that would be good. And at the end of the day, if you're just gonna end up dying to another tank because your weaponry from the ground vehicles isn't strong enough, the tank is still overall winning this fight, and it's still a vehicle ahead than this one, just because of the simple fact you're gonna be killing your opponent so many times by the time they're gonna kill you with the ground vehicle which they actually spawn. So I don't have a problem with spamming ground vehicles like this, which would be pretty powerful.
My next idea for armored vehicle was the SKH Vizor 77. This is a artillery with 152mm cannon. It could function like the other artilleries, but this one shoots shells, not rockets. This means that the direct hit to vehicles would do huge damage compared to the rocket artilleries. But don't forget, this would have one shell, and then it would have to reload.
So basically tactical play in a sense.
So it would not be broken. And since artilleries like this can use high explosive proximity shells, it could have another feature. Proximity shells would fly straight like the tank's shells, and it would work like the smart flak on the Overlord. And as with the AVH Reaper, where you can switch weapons, with Arty you could switch shells, but for balancing reasons, if you would fire one of these shells, both of the shells would be on reload. These were the few vehicle types that I think War Tycoon should add to the garage. Next, I want to talk about tank interiors.
Oh
Why
god,
don't the tanks have any
these are
sort of
empty.
interior when all of armored vehicles have some?
You know what I noticed recently with the tank interiors themselves? There were some interiors before, like a year ago, but recently they basically got rid of them and started having them incomplete by basically not adding a single bit. Like, there are vehicles like the Abrams X, the standard M1 Abrams, and the Bradley and all this stuff. They have all had a different interior. However, these new vehicles which we had, it feels like they're slowly getting really lazy with adding interiors to tanks, which this is kind of bad, because you might actually end up getting stuck in the interior itself, which is incomplete, and that'll be seen at the end of this video as well.
This one is not great, but when we compare this to the E100...
Yeah, perfect example. You might even get run over.
Looks just unfinished, but Bradley's interior is kind of weird. When we take a look, we can clearly see that the Bradley already has some, but it was not finished. I got pretty good idea how to finish it. Bradley has these huge doors at the back, and it reminds me of something. It is very similar to the Laser 3, and I'm asking, why don't they do the same for Bradley?
Yeah, this one's done so well.
The interior doesn't need to look so fancy like...
Okay, so here's the thing with the interiors of tanks. Kizmotech has made it clear before that the only reason he's not adding it is simply because of the lag factor, which is pretty interesting to me, because it doesn't make sense that ground vehicles do not lag with an interior, but the tanks do. Are they just using a different code for them? It's so confusing with a lot of answers that developers actually give us as well.
Like with the warships. But the laser treatment is enough.
Yeah.
And you might be asking, well, Newt the Bradley has this huge bay. But what about MBTS? Well, for example, the Tusk 2, like any other tank, has this driver's hatch, which could very well suit the job. But if not, you could create some space in the turret and add hatch there. And someone also might say, well, when you add these solid parts to the tank, it will be harder to get out of it.
That just adds skill to it.
Also, the reason the planes and helicopters will get some solid parts as well. I would make the cockpit windows solid part as well.
Oh yes, dude, I hate the fact you can just jump through the window and get out of your vehicle. Okay, here's the thing with the modern meta. No one likes dying, everyone seems to care about their kill to death ratio so much, so they just end up jumping out of vehicles every single time. Ejection seat is enough for planes, it makes sense, but with helicopters, you don't see someone in real life literally jumping out of their heli just randomly. It's like such a weird thing to do. With planes it does make more sense, but with helis it seems so much less.
You can't get out unless the cockpit is open.
Yeah, that'll make it more
Same
realistic.
would go for planes. Next, I would like to talk about some forgotten features on the
Yeah, that's my clip.
USS Zumwalt. The USS Zumwalt has its own moon pool, but right now it is there just for the looks. Adding some features to the moon pool, like the ability to spawn some weaponized boat, which would be exclusive to the Zumwalt only.
It's impossible
But this
right now.
feature would be kinda complicated, since when you spawn a second vehicle right now, the first one will disappear.
Yes,
And now
but
for
also
the
game
Independence,
physics.
it is a huge ship, yet the hull is used only a little bit. This is the only part of the ship you can interact with.
Exactly, dude. This is so much empty space. With the Zumwalt, you actually had so many more things that you could do. It feels like the Independence just ended up being one of the most lazy ships in the game. They could have used this space and added so much more depth to the ship, but it's almost like making me feel that the Zumwalt, because it's a premium paid vehicle, they just give it a better interior, but this one, since it's free and they won't make as much money from it, they didn't do this. That's kind of how it makes the player feel. I really don't want to speak like this, but that's literally what's going on right now. It really does feel like that. I just wish they would do something more with the Independence interior.
Which I think is kind of waste of potential.
Yes, dude.
Since there are even the doors modeled on the sides and the back of the Independence. Just imagine what kind of fun things you could do if it had working cargo bays.
Yes, bro.
But before this, there would need to be some changes done to the compatibility with ships and other vehicles. Because right now, helicopters are sliding on the hull.
Yeah, this is
and
terrible.
ground vehicles can't even touch it, without bugging the whole ship. Because the ground vehicle will be unable to move, and the ship will start tweaking, which results in drowning the ground vehicle. I'm a not developer, but I would suggest to add some kind of anchor feature which would attach the vehicle to the ship, making it unable to move.
Yeah, and Gizmotech has actually not responded to this. I've seen a lot of people give suggestions like this, but still not a single response from Gizmo. I really wonder what's going on behind the scenes.
But there would also have to be some other gravity code adjustments for ground
Oh, yeah.
vehicles, because the vehicles are being forced to fall to the ground.
Basically, physics
And
change.
this compatibility should be added to both the Zumwalt and the Independence.
Balance changes. Oh, yeah. I mean, they have been giving us some balance changes recently. Let's see what he has
Here
to say.
we got
here.
an armored vehicle called Laser 3 APC, which has a top speed of 40 miles per hour. Next, I got World War II medium tank called M4 Sherman, which can also go 40 miles per hour. And here I got heavier version of the Abrams called SEP Tusk 2, which has a top speed of 45 miles per hour. And I think that you know where I am going with this.
Forgotten
Most of the
vehicles.
armored vehicles in this game are so underpowered that it is just sad. I am going to ask you, what do you think will be faster? Some armored vehicle with light armament or fully loaded main battle tank?
It's always going to
I
be
know
the
most-
other vehicles, which are literally just light armored. And you know the worst part about these is that in real life, they're just so much faster. And another problem which I have with this is that I believe, when I have also talked about the laser previously, like a year ago, Gizmotech has seen the video, and all he did is buff the health of the laser. Nothing else seems to have changed. Why couldn't they give a vehicle a whole statistical rework? I bet this wouldn't even take more than 5 to 10 minutes than just changing some statistics in the code and just publishing it. It seems like such a simple change for the balancing, but it's really just not getting done.
People would say the armored vehicle would be faster,
Yeah.
but not in War Tycoon. Because for some unknown reason, armored vehicles just can't go faster than 45 miles per hour,
Yeah.
which is top speed for most tanks in this game. And don't even get me started on the durability. Most of the armored vehicles can survive a single tank shell, which is just stupid when the tank is fast as you are, if not even faster. I would suggest to increase the top speed of the armored vehicles, like the laser, to 55 or 60 miles per hour. I would also increase the hit points to like 1,000, and for some bigger vehicles even to like 1,200.
This would not be an
It
issue.
might seem like new tank, but don't forget the damage multiplier is very
Exactly.
different. And also
And the issue with damage multipliers is that, let me give you guys a perfect example right here. 1,000 health for ground vehicles in comparison to tanks is, let's just say these ones have 1,000, and for tanks that's going to be like 350 to 400 maximum, because the tank takes so much less damage, basically.
So the weapons of some of these armored vehicles need a huge buff, because doing 100 damage with free-aimed missile when you have 4 of them is just a joke.
And if these just end up being too OP by them buffing them, why can't they just add parts to the garage vehicles instead and simply just balance them in this way so they could actually be somewhat similar to tanks in terms of power, but still pretty far away? I think that could also be a nice way to do it, because I do understand that they want to keep these balanced, and that's why these vehicles end up being so underpowered, since you can obviously spam them, but still, it just gives us such a big shame to all of these vehicles right here.
This should allow armored vehicles to have chance to fight tanks if played properly, and I believe that armored vehicles should be fast, well weaponized, and somewhat survivable.
Somewhat is a good word.
And on the other hand, tanks should be the battle machines, slower, way more armored, and also well weaponized. So I think you could agree that the armored vehicles should receive some love.
Easily.
Next is water camping. Anyone who sometimes gets into PvP
Oh
knows
my god.
This has to be one of the most annoying things in the game.
Everyone does this.
It was bad before, but after the water relook, it is almost impossible to dig someone out of the water.
Yeah.
So to prevent this from happening, War Tycoon should add limited oxygen, which could last up to like 20 seconds, and after that you would start rapidly losing hit points.
It's such an easy
feature. And to
feature.
refill your oxygen, you would have to swim at the surface or be out of the water, and the refill cannot be instant. To max out your oxygen, you would have to wait like 4 or 5 seconds.
Such a perfect
And to spice
balance.
things up, I would also recommend to add oxygen tank, which could like double or triple your oxygen capacity.
But in return, you would be forced to have, I guess, slower movements, since you're obviously going to be heavier. However, I feel like you should be able to aim your weapons underwater as well. That would just add so much more to the PvP and force people to actually fight in a much different way, because water combat would just become much more prominent in the meta if they actually did this. So once again, a very good suggestion right here.
But the trade-off would be that you could either wear the oxygen tank or the parachute, not both at the same time.
That also works.
And also, to make it fair, to max out your oxygen tank capacity, it should take longer than the normal lung capacity. And now for the arguably most hated thing in the entire game, the Riot Shield.
Okay.
This thing caused more pain than any other bug while being in-game feature. The fact that you can pull completely bulletproof shield in the middle of a gunfight is just toxic and unfair towards the opponent.
Okay, so here's the thing. I have my little bit of a different take on this, and my take is that I don't think Riot Shield should be nerfed anymore. I did believe that it should have been nerfed like a year ago. However, now these days it basically became the part of the PvP and a part of the kit. There are so many things which can actually counter the Riot Shield. Perfect example of that is going to be all the explosive grenades, and now the brand new C4, which is just going to be an absolutely perfect counter. However, the Riot Shield seems to actually be very useful in countering people like the exploiters, which is very important, because right now we have so many people which are literally flying around in the game and shooting you with weapons, but the Riot Shield somewhat actually allows you to counter them. However, the problem with this game is that you literally have to use a feature that's already somewhat toxic to counter someone you're not supposed to be countering. There's not supposed to be exploiters that are literally forcing you to also use the Riot Shield. So I do somewhat agree with his points, but then at the same time, I feel like the Riot Shield is in a pretty good spot right now, and there are just so many things that could counter it. It does make the ARs a lot more useless, so perhaps adding a pretty high health to it could work, but I feel like still at the same time there would be some ups and downs to a Riot Shield nerf. I feel like right now it's not as much of a talked about topic, so if they leave it as it is, I think that would work. But let's hear the points he has to say.
And when I say completely bulletproof, I mean it. Just look at this.
Oh yeah. I mean, then again, how are you gonna fight tanks on the ground? I do understand that we're talking about realism right here. This is probably the only point I'm not gonna agree with right now, because sometimes it's not the best to have realism in the game, but also focus on the balance side. Because how are you supposed to defend yourself when you're in the middle of the desert and you have a tank that's literally shooting at you? Come on, like, you have two counters to actually kill this guy right here. You got the grenades, which have area damage, and you have the tank cannon, which can pretty much just one-tap. And you do also have angles which you could use, so once again, it's realism versus balance right now that I'm feeling.
I think we can all agree that the Riot Shield should definitely get some changes, because right now, well, it is in pretty toxic state.
The game needs changes before the Riot Shield, in my opinion. The game is what forces people to use the Riot Shield, and the way in which the game is actually designed right now. That's another issue which I got. But yeah, this is true. I'm gonna skip this part a little bit, to the point.
Change it. And the first is to make it have set amount of hit points, and after that it would break. This would keep the panic capabilities of the shield, but it would not be infinite, which is a good thing. But I am not a fan of this rework.
But it would have to have a lot of
is
health.
To make the view window a weak spot where the shots would pass through.
Yeah.
So you could counter the shield user with firearms if you would aim well. It's not bad change, but I think we can do better. And for the third and final way is to make the bolt action sniper plus the Barrett.
The problem with this is that if you make snipers penetrate for the Riot Shield, yes, that will end up being more realistic, but it will make the snipers even more meta than what they already were. This is the problem right here. There's so many disadvantages to nerfing the Riot Shield, and as he said in the previous 2 points, they both would work, but at the same time they have so many issues. Like the Riot Shield is probably the most controversial one right here out of all these things he talked about. I agree with everything except for this one, probably.
Be able to penetrate the shield anywhere, like if it was not there. You will still be immune to rifles and shotguns, but now...
Yeah, but then that makes them useless, once again. I mean, they're already not very useful, but then at the same time... like I said, so many things that are just gonna end up with backlashes, because I bet if the Riot Shield does get nerfed at this point, it's pretty much just going to be the sniper nerf drama 2.0, which hasn't been the best on the developers. It really did make them in a pretty bad spot.
There's other thing that would penetrate it, but this one is non-questionable, to make vehicle machine guns penetrate the shield again. And for those who don't know, back in the days of oil warfare Tycoon, the shield could be penetrated by any vehicle turret or remote machine gun, and this was the balance feature of it. Then they removed it, and people started to abuse it. There could be other ways to balance it, but I like the vehicle's machine guns and snipers most, and I think that it is fair for both parties. Phew, that was a lot of stuff, but I think I covered some of the worst things.
Yeah, honestly, this was a really good video. I appreciate what Newt has actually done, and I'm actually really glad that this video is getting a lot of views. Right now, he's sitting at 5k, very deserved. This is one of the most underrated YouTubers for War Tycoon, in my opinion. Do give this guy some love. He definitely does deserve it, and he does make some very high-quality content. At the moment, he probably is my favorite War Tycoon YouTuber out of all of them because of the unique content that he makes. Anyway, guys, do let me know in the comment section down below if there are any other videos which are really unique and interesting that I should react to. This was a very long video, to be honest, so hopefully next time there won't be as long of a video which I'll have to react to, but either way we covered a lot of important stuff, and I think a lot of changes like this will be good for the game. Anyway, see you guys next video, have a great day, and I will be leaving a link in the description and the pinned comment to check this dude out.